welcome everyone. I'm very excited to be here today. It's my first talk in Rome. It's also the first time that I am in Rome, actually. And I'm very happy that the weather is nice. And yeah, I'm very happy to be here today. The conference location is very nice and the atmosphere is very, very energetic and nice. My talk today is about learn how to embrace conflict and learn how to turn conflicts into win-win situations for yourself. Why am I a person to talk about that? I'm a coach and a mediator. Mediators accompany the process of conflict resolution between two or more people. I work with leaders and with teams to enhance communication and productivity in teams. I'm located in Berlin. So when we think about conflict, what we usually have in mind is this association of being against each other and being in this loaded situation that's tense, where we don't know what to do, where we don't know what's best to do, or where we feel that we need a strategy to get out of it. It's not a comfortable situation to be in. So, to give you some insights of how you can change this perception of conflicts, I'm going to talk about them today. And I'm going to start out with a little story that was maybe my first on-site inspiration that I had when it comes to conflicts. So after I did the coaching and mediation university, I was still working in HR in a small tech company, and there was two colleagues that had a major issue with each other. So one day, Sam approached me and said, "Lea, there's this colleague, I just cannot deal with him anymore. He's always tense, he's bitching at me, I don't know what else to do. I tried to talk to him, but it just doesn't work out anymore." Then I was talking to the other colleague, Pete, and he said, "Yeah, I have this problem. This Sam is so super rude. I cannot deal with him anymore. The situation is so loaded. I feel like just quitting this job. I don't want to deal with this person anymore." So what I did was I put them together to one table and facilitated a conversation with the two of them. And it turned out that things that Pete was so angry about was that there was comments in GitHub next to the code where it just said, "This is bullshit," and that was it. Or they were having actually fights and discussions over chat, and it was just not nice language being used. And it even came down to Pete saying that Sam was saying bad things about a musician that is from his home country, which he feels was just an insult, and he just felt completely unappreciated and disrespected. And throughout this conversation, we got to a point where Sam actually told Pete, after we got into the situation a bit more, "I feel so sorry that you feel disrespected by me, and just tell me what it is, what I can do to make you feel respected or to show you that I respect you, because this is also what I want. I also want to feel respected, and I do want this for you as well. So tell me, what is it that I can do?" And once this sentence fell, Pete felt that, "Oh wow, this colleague is just actually not that awful. He's not a bad person. He's not mean to me. There was just a misunderstanding between the two of us." And from that point on, they were able to talk to each other again. And even weeks after, both of them were still like coming to me every once in a while, telling me, "Lea, what you did was just the best ever. I appreciate it so much because now we can talk again." And it was just this conflict that had slowly added up to some points that it was just impossible for them to face it anymore. But going then into the conversation and hearing from each other, "I just want you to feel respected. What can I do?" So that was my first enlightening situation that I had when it comes to conflicts, where this was just a success moment for me seeing others resolving a conflict. And yeah, the other story, which direction does it go, that I want to share with you is about myself. So I did not always have a positive perception towards conflicts. So I think it's best visible if you look at my career. So over the past, I looked at it yesterday, I think it's like 8 years. I have worked in more than 5 companies, I think. And most of the times I was facing situations where I felt it just unbearable, and there was just mostly the team lead of mine that I just couldn't stand. I didn't get along with. It came down to situations where one of my bosses told me that I was not using the right method to stack to stack paper. So I shouldn't use the stapler or the clips, but just one method. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to trust me anymore. So it was situations such as that. There was another boss when I told him I don't just want to be working in this small field anymore, but like enhance my task, my responsibilities. He looked at me and asked me, "What do you want to do? Quit?" and started laughing. So most of the times, that's actually what I ended up doing. I quit. But always after quitting a job, I looked back and was thinking to myself, what is it that I am learning from that experience? What is it that I could have done differently maybe to not leaving this situation, but just make it better for myself? So then another job, after so many jobs I have quit, I started, and there it was a very great work environment. I was super energetic. I liked to work there. I was driven. I was giving my best. It was like the perfect place for me. I was just super happy to be there. And then at some point, my boss started to be like, he was getting bitchy at me. He was just telling me, I don't know, things that I was incompetent. He was yelling at me in public and blaming me for things. He was taking away responsibility from me, and I just didn't know why. And I was looking at all the things that I was seeing, and I was thinking, I think he just wants to get rid of me. There's no explanation that I can actually have for what's happening right now. And then, after quitting so many jobs, I was thinking, no, I cannot quit this time just like that. I don't walk away now. I'm going to do something about it. So I sent him an email saying, I want to talk to you. This is my situation. I want to talk to you. So we sat down together. First thing that happened, he was a bit aggressive. He was feeling I'm blaming him. And he looked at me and said, "You're going to quit, aren't you? Why are we having this conversation anyways?" So I told him, no, I didn't make up my mind yet. It would be an option if we cannot resolve this situation that I quit. I don't have anything to lose if it stays like that. But it's a conversation without a fixed ending. It's an open end. So I went into this conversation with the attitude and mindset that I don't know the answers. I don't know what's going to happen. I just know that it's something that we can figure out through talking to each other. And this is what we actually did. So I was talking about myself using iMessages. What did I do? How did I perceive the situation? And also not how I was seeing him in the whole thing and judging what he was doing right or wrong and what I hated about him, but just telling him my point of view, which was an observation rather than a judgment. So when he could actually sense that I was genuine and honest with what I was saying, that it's an open end and that I'm actually not blaming him, he started to relax a bit, and we could get down to the problems and to the source of what was going on. And in the end, he even told me that whatever he did was super stupid, and he should have thought about it, but he was just in such a stressful situation that he kind of lost his head and didn't realize what he was doing anymore. And after we had this conversation, we actually, I did stay in this company then, and we had a good work atmosphere again, and the conflict was gone. So we did resolve it completely. There was no hard feelings left, there was no attitude left, but we got back to where we started out a year before. So that was my second experience from my own perspective. And yeah, now I'm gonna share the bit more of a theoretical background. So when we look at conflicts itself in companies, they are a major cost driver. So if this is all the costs that you have in your company, then this is the ones that you are making due to conflicts. So you could have that few. So it's actually 20% of costs that the conflicts are responsible for. And it's the same for the time that you're working in the company. 15% of time are just lost to conflict resolution. It's lost because you have to go into a conversation with a colleague or with your boss or with whoever in your team. It's just because there's a misunderstanding or just this fight going on. So you could actually, if you didn't have that, you could just like take these 6 hours a week and just stay home and do something nice, which would be nice. So how do conflicts evolve is the next question, to understand how we can also change dynamics. So a conflict is always a matter of a combination of things, which is there's for once the thing that the thing is actually about. So if you think of the example with Pete and Sam, there's this code, which might have been bullshit or not. But this is not what the conflict is about. The conflict is about that Pete disagrees with how Sam approaches him. He doesn't want to read some comment in GitHub where it says bullshit. He feels unappreciated through this. So it's the process behind that that causes this friction and emotions. It's as if you stick like a, how is it called, like a piece of wood or something in between these things, and then it just doesn't work anymore. And the whole thing is blocked. And it's the same when you think of many things, actually. An example is organizational justice, so the justice within a company. So there's two kinds of justices. The one is how the things are divided between people, distributed, and the other is the process behind it. So actually the process of how things are worked out and distributed is much more important than the distribution itself. So the process is always overruling the matter itself. And this is then also the cause of the things, that there's emotions that have been caused by just a wrong process that doesn't let the thing work out anymore. So this is where the conflict, or how, or why, I guess, the conflict is created. So whenever we're faced with the conflict, there's different strategies on how to deal with it. So when I'm thinking back of my first few jobs, I usually, I was thinking to myself, well, I tried to bring it up, the problem that I was bored or that I was not happy with my responsibilities. So, but in the end, it came down to just avoiding the conflict. I didn't make a fuss about it. I just, after a point, I was just thinking, well, no one is listening to me. Well, no one cares that I'm bored. Well, okay, I'm going to quit. So I just left. So in the end, basically, I was just avoiding it. So I lost what I wanted to get out of this job, which was learning curve, whatever. And also, I'm not in touch with any of the bosses that I was working with back then. So the relationship level is also not working out. Then the 2. Well, anyways. Then the other one would be a cutback. So let's say we're sticking to my responsibilities at a certain job. So I'm saying, listen, Tom, my boss, I would like to get more responsibilities in this company. And the boss just tells me, no, it's not possible. And I really like that person, so I'm thinking to myself, well, if you say so, I really like to go for coffee with you and whatever. I enjoy our work relationship, so I'm just not going to bother anymore. So if I am actually fine with that, and I really appreciate this relationship that we have, I'm just going to take a cut back on the goals that I wanted to achieve, and that's it. On the other hand, the other option would be, I'm telling him, Tom, no way. I know you're right now taking care of this, but from now on, I'm going to do it. And in the future, your boss is going to see that I can do it much better than you, so screw you. I'm just going to do it. I'm going to go for it. So I totally get out what I want on the goal orientation level, but Tom is probably not going to talk to me anymore. He might even sabotage me inside the company. Who knows what's going to happen, but it's not going to have a good ending on the relationship level. Then what we do many times is that we compromise. So that would be Tom telling me, listen, Lea, I understand that you want to take on more responsibility. I actually really like the field too, and I was thinking maybe we can split things. So you do a bit of this and I do a bit of that. And maybe secretly he's thinking to himself, this is not like the ideal situation for me, but because Lea is maybe strategically important for me, I'm not going to bother, and we're somehow going to figure it out. So in the end, we cut back a bit on the relationship level, but also we don't get what we want in the end. And the ideal state would be to cooperate. So in this example, it would be that we talk about what we actually want. So maybe for Tom, it's this promotion, and maybe for me, it's just the learning curve. So we could figure out a scenario where he gets promoted anyways, and I have the learning curve anyways. Maybe that includes that I take over all of his responsibilities. Probably not all of them, but the ones I want. And we maintain a good relationship level because we're both useful for each other, and we get both of us the goal that we want to get out of it, and that we only get because we talked about it. And we did not sit both of us in our little corner and thinking to ourselves, how could we solve this? But we were just getting to each other, talking about it, and exchanging what it really is that we really, really want. And that's then how we get to the cooperation. So one big component of conflicts and how they're created is the language and perception that is being used. So before I was mentioning already, when my boss back then in that one company started bitching at me, I was thinking, I think he just wants to get rid of me. And that was all in my head because he didn't actually want to. So there's sometimes that our perception tricks us. And I put a little video to that. And now I'm wondering if it's going to work. Well, nope.
You're going to be petting them and they'll just all of a sudden bite you.
I cannot see the mouse. Huh? Ah, there it is. No? 1 second. Something's wrong here. Now I got it. Okay, we're back. So, it's everything comes down to we have an observation, and then we have a judgment, and then we have an interpretation. So if we look at the video, the observation was the cat stepped on the pot fell down, there was a mess on the floor, the guy took the cat to not make a mess anymore. But what the woman saw was just a little piece of it, and her judgment was, of course, the interpretation was, he's killing my cat, and the judgment, what an awful person. So most of the things come down to that, actually, that we have an observation that we don't see it actually anymore, what we observe in our environment, because we're trained since kindergarten to have judgments and to have interpretation of things. And also that's what makes us, it allows us to act faster, to be faster at work, to be faster in communications and conversations, in everything. So we're trained to not take the observation anymore, but to judge and interpret the situation. So when we get back to the Pete and Sam example, that would be the observation is just that there might have been one line or two of code that the person did not agree with, or he would have done it differently. But then the next thing that happens is that he judges that's bullshit. It's just not a good line of code. So then the interpretation is that probably Pete is some kind of rookie that doesn't know his shit, or he just wants to put the team goals at danger, or he doesn't care about the team, or whatever, you name it. I'm sure you can think of many interpretations that you can connect with that. So when we look at the dynamics behind that, what happens is when we are like, we don't even see, I don't like this line or I don't agree with this line, but the first thing we're thinking is, what an idiot. So the next thing we do is talk to the person, that's bullshit. And then what happens is, from being on eye level with the person, we degrade the person and make the person that small. So we're telling him that's bullshit, and the person's like, really? Oh no. And maybe if you have a person with a low self-esteem, the person actually believes it, that it's bullshit, because maybe the person does acknowledge that you're more senior and more advanced in this special field, so he might agree with you. And that then feeling in such a small state and so bad in the end does not put the person into a position where he is able to communicate with you on eye level anymore. So what is the person going to do? There's not like, yeah, you're right. I think you're right. It's bullshit. Like, why did I put all these hours in there? So it's with many sentences that we see in everyday work life that they're just on this judgmental level. It's even when you take a sentence such as, you're late, it looks like it's just a description, right? But when you actually take a deeper look and put some more thoughts into it, what is actually being late? So taking it from the descriptive level, being late would just be you're behind the agreed time. So first of all, we agreed on some time. And second of all, you're not coming at the agreed time, but maybe later or earlier. But later or earlier is just a judgment. Because, for instance, if we look at, I was just thinking to give an example of a country that is known to be on time, then I was thinking of Germany, not. Its reputation, but not. So let's say in one context, the being late is like 5 minutes or 15 minutes. But then when you take it to some country, maybe in Latin America, let's say Brazil, maybe they're like being late is like a time frame of 2 hours. And then being 5 minutes, it's like, dude, you're so on time. I was on vacation this year actually, and we were sitting in a cafe. It was in Middle America, and there was a person next to us on his phone. And he was talking on his phone to the person. Yeah, we're already there. We're already there. And then we were thinking about it, dude, where does he have to go? And it's like he did not even pay the bill yet, but he was already there. So he didn't even pay, and we were thinking it's going to take him probably 1 hour to get there, but he's saying, I'm already there. So it's just an interpretation of if you're late or not. So it's based on many factors, but it's not a description. And this is so everyday language that we, at first sight, we were thinking it's just a description, but it's not. So we have to be very careful with looking at a description or a judgment or an interpretation. It's very sometimes sensitive to differentiate between it, but yeah, take a deeper look. So, strategies. What strategies are there to deal with the conflicts? So, when I was preparing, I was thinking there's two different ways of looking at conflicts, and maybe there's just one category with misconceptions and then the other one with attacks, because some people probably just want to be mean and want to do something that like hurts our reputation or our self-appreciation. And then I was thinking about it, and I was thinking, no, it's actually just everything comes down to being a misconception. And why is that? Because when you look at it, actually, it's that every person acts out of the need to, out of the desire to fulfill himself a need. So people are very focused on themselves. It's just like that. We don't actually take the effort to do something just to do something for someone else. Like, it's always that we do it for ourselves. So I studied economics, and then one time we had this example of I don't know how the term is in English, but there was one dude who the example was in that course like that. So the person spent all of his money to buy flowers for his partner, and then it's like, that's so irrational. It just doesn't make any sense. It's like, yeah, but this is really maximizing his own needs, like his own whatever he needs. And this is what we do. We choose strategies to get the most out of it for us. So if we get back to the Sam and Pete example, maybe Sam is a person who really values and is in need for quality work and for time efficiency, and that's all he wants. So that's all he really cares about. So he chooses the strategy to take the most time efficient shortcut and just do the bullshit comment. Whereas the Pete dude is just really, he values respect, and that's all he wants. Which doesn't mean that he's not also quality driven or wants time efficiency, but the method that Sam chose was just not right for him. So when you look at this interaction, for me it also comes down a bit to when you are starting to use a new device. Let's say you change from Android to iPhone. So you're used to a certain pattern in the Android to get to wherever you want to. Let's say, I don't know, take a picture, whatever it is, or to change the settings in your phone, let's say the time, because you want to be on time, and time is something that matters to you. So the pattern would be, well, I click here, there, and then you're there. Then when you go to iPhone, it just works differently. So you have to work with your iPhone to get to the best strategy to still be time efficient. And it's the same when you work with people. You have to find out which strategy you can choose to get to what it is that you yourself desire. So in a way, it also gets back to the question, well, then I always have to adapt my behavior towards every single person, and maybe then I'm not authentic anymore. But it's not about, like, I don't know, following a playbook or like a different, you know how these guidelines are for every single person. But in a way, it's what does it actually cost you to adjust one single behavior and like not write bullshit anymore, but just maybe exchange that small word for a different word, which would be suboptimal. Let's say it's an easy change. The other person can accept it much more easy, and you get to whatever you wanted: time efficiency and quality code. So, the how-to. I'm on time. How to check the facts. So, whenever you see a situation where you think this is kind of weird, or I feel this is one of these situations where it's just friction and you don't really like it, check the facts. What is it that actually happened? Also, when you think of the video, what is it that actually happened when you just look at it from the woman's perspective? She just saw someone with a cat in his hands, some red color, and a knife. That's all that happened. I mean, it looks, if you interpret it, it looks wrong, but there's a different story to it. So check the facts. What is it that you actually know? Question yourself. Am I just overreacting? Is there, maybe I did have a boyfriend before that killed my cat, so this is just a memory it triggers, and I'm in panic right now the moment I see it. But yeah, maybe it is like that. So also question yourself and think of it, is it some triggering in me, or is it actually happening? And then, of course, talk to each other. Rather sooner than later, because the longer you wait, the more the conflict is going to add up. And if it actually reaches some kind of level, you're not going to be able to resolve it anymore. And at some point, for every conflict, there's a ladder of, I think, one person invented, 12 levels of escalation. So in the first 4 of them, it's easy to resolve. In the next 4, it's getting kind of tricky. And in the last 4, it actually goes down to just destroying each other no matter at what cost. And you don't want to get there. So start in the first 4 levels when it's still handleable. Talk about yourself, which means how do you feel when you read this bullshit message? Instead of talking, you are judging me, you are not being a nice colleague, you are doing this wrong, you are doing this wrong. But it's actually, what is it happening with yourself? What is it that you need? What is it that this causes for you? It could be when I read this comment, bullshit, I feel very demotivated and unproductive. And then I cannot work all day anymore. And I would really like to be productive. So also use iMessages. Don't tell the other person what the other person has to do, but just, it could also be, but the best way to get something from someone is to actually be sure of what it is that the other person could do to support you. So that could be, when I'm thinking of the Pete and Sam example, it could be, it would really help if you don't agree with my code, that we could sit down together for 2 minutes or talk on the phone if we're working remotely, that we could talk about what is suboptimal about it, because I want to learn and I think you're smart and I can learn from you. So put your ego in your pocket and let it be there. Be open to whatever result comes out of it. So in conflict resolution, we also have this term, it's called BATNA, Best Alternative to a Negotiation Agreement. So it makes sense when, taking the example of talking to my boss, that I knew that if we don't find a solution, I'm going to quit no matter what. Like, I'm not going to take this any longer. But I was open to talk about whatever that could be. So I did not have the result already figured out. I did not go into the conversation with the solution being ready. I was going into the conversation, entering it. I was open for whatever would come out of it. So that helps. Find the connectors. I'm sure both of you want to be, quality code, short time, getting your sprints done. You probably both want that. So if you relate to things that you both want, it's easier for the other person to also step into your shoes and say, this is my strategy, this is what I want, and I'm just here to fulfill myself, my own needs. So, this person could actually help me get there. So, find the connectors, it's easier. Change perspective, also think, like step into the other person's shoes and think to yourself, what is it that the other person could want? And maybe this is also something that you want. So, that's it. Thanks.